Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to attend this workshop on research methodology for the IJO and JCOT initiative. Regards from Chandigarh. I will be talking about the original research article, how to do it right, and make sure your research paper gets through to a journal at the first go. The objectives will be: 1. The parts of an original research paper, the sequence of paper writing, the reporting guidelines, and tips to get it right. So the broad structure of the research paper is the IMRAD. There's the introduction, methods, results, and discussion. So it refers to the why is introduction. Why this research, particular one? How is the methods? How are we going to do this research? Results will be what are the results, and so what is the discussion part. Okay, these are my results. So what? How should I compare with the rest? And then we conclude with a conclusion. So the overall geometry of the paper is like an hourglass, wherein the introduction and discussion will be a broad, without much focus, taking references elsewhere. The core of the paper is the methodology and the results, which will be the specific related to a research paper. So let's start with introduction. It can be divided into 3 parts. The first part is what is known about that particular research topic, what is unknown, and then the bridge between them. We introduce them about, okay, we know about such things in the literature. For example, we are doing a PRP study. What is known? We will tell, okay, PRP, we know the clinical results are this, and then now the variables. Suppose we want to find whether there is an effect on dose, then we introduce the unknown thing. And then the hypothesis. Always the introduction last part should be the aims or the hypothesis. The tips is to keep the section short, clear, concise, and non-technical, so that any reader at the first instance of an introduction finds it interesting. You should emphasize the importance of the study and how it fills the gap between what we know and what we don't. And at the end, introduce the research question. The don'ts are, do not answer the research question here, nor the details, the description, the speculation, and the criticism of the study. You reserve it for the discussion. Methodology is the crux, the heart of the original research paper, wherein detailed explanation of how you conducted your research should be said. And why is it the findings? It's important. So some of the tips are: describe the steps you took as though you are telling a recipe, like steps 1, 2, 3. But again, be wary, not too much of the details. One of the important thing is, for example, you are doing a pediatric neck femur paper, research paper, and you're using a Delbit classification. You don't need to tell about a Delbit classification. You just reference it and that should be fine. So you should know how to control and what to write, what not to write. So the tips is you break into smaller section with subheadings. When was the research? Where was the research? The authority or the approval, the sample selection, the data collection, how was it done? When was the follow-up done and how did you analyze? If you follow them, you will include everything. Next comes the results. It actually tells what our original research, the data showed, and point out any relationships and the trends on the findings. It should be always without a bias or interpretation, and it should be arranged in a logical sequence. You should again avoid providing unnecessary data. You should only provide what is required, what is specific for the research question. Usually if it's a research paper, the protocol, the thesis, the data is so much, but you should know the research question and relevant results to that. The tip is to be the friendly narrator. Result section for an average reader will appear so confusing, the statistics, values and all. So you should be a friendly narrator so that they understand what you're talking. Some tips are, you should avoid repeating the numbers that are already there in the tables and the figures. First, you prepare the tables and the figures, and then data should be restricted only there. You just summarize them in the table. For example, in again a thesis or a research, there will be a lot of papers on the demography, age, sex, distribution, all those things. Here, one single table summarizing the baseline characteristics will do it all. Rest details of the figures and tables will be dealt in another talk. And break the result section also into subsections. I'll tell you how to do that. The discussion. It means, what do the results mean? Okay, these are our results. What does the other people say about it and all those things? The section is the easiest to write, believe me, but it's the most difficult to write it well. In fact, you should be a salesman over here. You should actually interpret and sell your data to the journal, and then you have to convince the editor, see, this is my study. This is how it's different. So please accept it. A good discussion will make through to in a good journal. So you can break it again, restate the key findings of your paper, of the research question which you would ask. See, one more thing is, introduction is separate. Where you left the introduction, then you start the discussion. Do not just repeat or rearrange. This is one of a common problem we come across. The same introduction part we find in the discussion. They should be different. You should anticipate the reader's question and explain why your results are important. And again, do not include a lot of references in an original research paper, only what is relevant. In a systematic review or meta-analysis, is different, but here include good quality references in a controlled way. So you can divide it into, one is to summarize the results, your findings, and compare it with the other literature papers and the implications. And last, you add a shortcomings and the limitations, and you should be able to explain how you can improve and give a message of how to do a good studies further. And again, in some papers, the last paragraph should be the conclusion, or otherwise a conclusion can be different part. Now the sequence of paper writing, the methods and results come the first. That is the central report section. Because see, you have data, your research is done, you take out the results, methods, and then go into the introduction and discussion. So the sequence is as such. First thing is tabulate your results and the figures. So you got the tables and the figures, right? I would first go with the results. Let me see. Okay, these are the results. My result is done. The methodology, if it were a good study with a registration and a protocol, your thing is done even before the study is complete. You just have to write it, condense it according to the paper instructions. Last part is the introduction and discussion. The second last part, where you should write it in continuity, giving equal importance to introduction and discussion, and avoid mixing both. Last is the abstract, which is very important. So why does the abstract matter? For me, abstract is the front door to your paper. It's important even before you publish, when you upload, because if you want to avoid desk rejection from the editorial office, your abstract should be good. Second, an editor sends it for some reviewer to accept. The reviewer first sees the abstract. Only if he finds it good, he will accept a review. So that's why before publishing. After publishing, again, it's important because a good abstract will tell the success of your paper. A good abstract and a title, so a PubMed search, the visibility will improve so that people can include in systematic review and meta-analysis, and ensures the best possible outreach and citation. It's an art actually to write a good abstract. And more important is to catch the reader attention with a good title. So last part is to give a good title. It should be short and incisive with all the necessary keywords. For an example, you read these two titles, it's the same, but how we can change. Comparing 4 ml versus 8 ml intraarticular PRP injection for early ONE, a prospective randomized controlled trial. But how about this? Do we need to upgrade the dose of PRP from 4 ml to 8 ml for early ONE, a prospective triple blind study? So this is exactly how you have to take time and be creative in abstract and title. Then the rest of the abstract is a standard background, the aims, the results, and the conclusion. The tip is, before writing the abstract, check the abstract format in the target journal. Most of the journal will have different abstract format. So please stick to that. Next, reporting guidelines. This is what I want all of you to understand. There's an Equator network. The reporting guidelines are ensured so that all researchers who are doing the research present their data in a uniform way so that people can understand and communicate easily. The Equator network was exactly built for that, and they have got reporting guidelines for randomized trials, observational studies, systematic reviews, animal trials, all those things. For example, a randomized control trial has got a CONSORT documents, which is a consolidated standards of reporting trials. It has got a checklist and a flow diagram, a 25 item checklist, what all should be included in reporting, and a flow diagram which shows the progress of all the participants through the trial. If you can see this checklist in the methodology section, for instance, you can see the trial design, participants, what interventions, outcomes, what all were done, sample size. So if you follow this pattern, you will make sure your reporting will be fine. And here we have got the page numbers. At the end, this checklist with all the page numbers should be attached in the supplementary material. If you do that, the chances of acceptance is good. This is a flow diagram, again easily available in the PDF and the Word doc. You just have to put the numbers so we understand how the patient's progress, where all is the numbers lost to follow, all those stuff. For instance, one of our published article, you can see it's a randomized control trial. We have done a flow diagram of all the group distribution, how they've progressed. And if you see the material methodology, we have again split research design, sample and sampling, PRP preparation, intervention procedure, outcome measures, statistical analysis. So if you follow the checklist, you will make sure you won't miss any important thing. So moving from the randomized control trial, next is any cohort studies, case control, cross-sectional studies, which is the most part of the orthopedic research, used to present their case series and all. Again, we have a specific STROBE statement that is strengthening the reporting of observational studies in epidemiology. It's got 22 checklist items. Again, detailed items of what should be there in methodology, what should be there in results, discussion also. If you follow this format, the paper will come out really good. And animal research, they have got an AADO guidelines. That is animal research, reporting of in vivo experiments. Again, a checklist is there. For example, one of the checklists for a paper which we uploaded, we have written where all line numbers, what all to see for. This says that you have followed a guideline and it gives you a good impression. So some of the smart tips at the end, spend time and get the abstract right. It should be short and crisp. Ask your colleague to read and comment on the clarity of the papers from a reader's perspective. Trust me, you will get a lot of inputs if you do this exercise. Shortlist the target journals even before manuscript preparation. If you have a manuscript, you should at least have 4 target journals in mind and write accordingly. Check the other guidelines of each of them and follow them. If it gets rejected one place, before submitting to other, see their author's guidelines and modify it. If there are any comments from the first, try to incorporate them. Now, the last part, if you want to target the top journals, the real planning actually starts much before the research. You should have done a good literature review. The methodology should be fine, best, but the most important is trial registration. Clinical trials should be registered in a publicly accessible database even before the first participant is recruited. So try major. Today, all the top journals, if your clinical trial is not registered, they won't accept it. It's as simple as that. Some journals, even if they don't have a required 2-year follow-up, they may not. So please, trial registration is important if you want to target good. So the WHO has got an international clinical trial registry platform where a lot of good trial registries are there. So for example, in India, it's the CTR, a clinical trial registry. And we got the US clinicaltrial.gov, which was the original one, which even gave guidelines to the WHO. So the clinical trial registry in India, for any research, we should do that. Remember, prospective registration. That's before enrollment of even the first patient. So my dear friends, the take-home message, the broad structure is the IMRAD. The sequence is always for me tables and figures first, then the results and methods, followed by last, the introduction and discussion. Abstract writing is an art and most important part. By following standard reporting guidelines, life is much easy. You can ensure that all important things are mentioned, and always consider trial registration if you want to target good journals. Thank you.